Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on when you're getting this Training Tuesday workout in. Could even be Wednesday by this point. But this is Kirk's vacation week. So you're getting just me this week. And there were a few things I was interested in talking about. Obviously, it was going to be shoes or drugs. But yesterday, Matt Mason and I recorded a race brain episode. And towards the very end of it, he said that Rich also went solo this week and did an episode about running for HYROX. And he said it'd be hilarious if you just started a beef with him and released the same episode, but saying why he was wrong. And I actually love the idea from the standpoint of talk about the exact same thing that Rich did, do the exact same episode, but sight unseen. So he talked about, I believe the title was How to Build a Running Program for HYROX. And so that's what I'm going to do today as well. Having not listened to Rich's, and he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I know our audience has a lot of crossover. And so you're going to get the two of us this week, both giving our individual views on running for HYROX, but without having consulted with each other. And it will be very interesting to see how much in alignment we are and what points we differ on. And Rich and I have communicated a lot over the years with our podcast. He's been on mine, I've been on his. We did Race Brain together for years, and we do calls from time to time, just coaching calls. And I've talked about that on here, how he's been a great resource for me. So we share a lot of core beliefs about run programming, but we also do have some things that we prefer differently than the other person. But the most important difference is that as these years have gone on, he has continued to race HYROX as his, I'm not going to say full-time occupation, because obviously his podcasting and coaching makes up a big chunk of what he does as a professional, but he is also for lack of better terms, he's a full-time athlete. His entire focus is HYROX. I don't think he's run a different race other than HYROX for several years now. Whereas I have run 2 races in the last 3 years from a HYROX standpoint. So I am back training for HYROX right now. Joyce, who is a guest on this podcast, and I are teaming up for a mixed doubles in Dallas in 3 weeks. And then after that, that race will inform me how far I am off my fitness needed to go after a pro race, because as I repeat endlessly anytime anyone asks, and I do believe I got indirect, kind of like subtweeted, called out on a podcast about the podcast on an Instagram post, making fun of things people HYROX are saying. One was, I'll never stop until I break 60. But that's exactly my thing. Like, I'll never say I'm done with HYROX until I finally break 60. And I'm nowhere close right now. So I have a long way to go. But so this topic is timely for me as well, because I'm back training for HYROX exclusively right now. I'm doing nothing other than HYROX training. And so it's entirely my running programming right now is based around HYROX. So it's great that Rich did it. It's great that I'm thinking about it, but it's also, I think, perfect that we are going to put out dueling episodes without having discussed it in advance. So you're just gonna have to take my word on it that I have not listened to Rich's episode. And I think there's even a good chance he doesn't even listen to ours after the fact, but I'm going to go back and listen to his on my next run. In fact, right after I get done with this, I'm heading out for a tempo run, which, spoiler alert, is a very rare component to my HYROX programming. This is the only one I'm doing, maybe one more throughout this block. And I'm only actually doing this one to compare to the last time I built to a pro race. I did some 4, 5, and 6 mile tempos. So this is simply data gathering, not even part of my true programming for the HYROX race. So after this, I might listen to his episode during my tempo run, or at least during the warm up and the cool down. So let's do this. I don't know where he started with this. I don't know what his chapters or flow of it are. So it may not be the kind of thing where you can like listen to his first 10 minutes and then mine. I'm just going to freestyle here, and who knows how it's going to match up with his. So this is a topic I've talked about many times throughout the years. I've been on several different podcasts of other people's to talk about my theory for run training for HYROX. And my answer has been slightly different every time, because the sport just keeps evolving, and things that were difficult for us at the start are no longer difficult, but other things are. And so some of my core beliefs have changed about it, but many of them haven't. So my overall take on running for HYROX is that it still is like running for triathlon. It really depends what your background was coming into this sport. That's going to drive where you really go with your run training and the percentage of time you spend on different types of running. But in general, I believe that the best practice for running for HYROX, you could just take this clip out of context and listen to these next 20, 30 seconds and then stop the episode from there if you wanted to. Obviously, I'm going to break down why I believe this and how to implement it. But my overarching view on running for HYROX is that best practice is that throughout your year, you should build your running metrics in an absolute vacuum as well as you can. And then pair that with the ability to access as high a percent of those running metrics as possible while under duress, so that on race day, you can attack and use and recover on the runs. And what I mean by that is that the best scientifically proven way of improving your running is just to do run intervals. It's better than any other style of running for improving your racing. That's not debatable. Intervals are the single most effective means of improving your running. And so I believe you have to do run intervals. And I believe you should do them mostly year round. I also believe the compromised running, to coin to use the term Kirk coined with us years ago, way back in the leaderboard days, compromised running while under duress, under fatigue, where body parts are not working under the same loads they normally would be in terms of what's required of them. Compromised running is a cornerstone of HYROX training. And how good you are at compromised running directly determines how good you're going to do on race day. And this is, I believe, where it differs from OCR training and Ironman training or triathlon training. With both of those, if you simply improve your overall running ability, you will improve your overall racing. And that's not necessarily true for HYROX. In fact, I think more often than not, it won't even be close to a one-to-one correlation. So the example I'm going to lead with is that you take an OCR athlete and just train them for any run distance, improve your 5K, take your 5K from 18 minutes to 16 minutes, and you're going to be that much better on race course. You take your 10-mile time and take it from 70 minutes down to 60 minutes, and you're just going to be notably better on all the runs. You improve your marathon time. We've even seen people drop their marathon time, and as an obstacle course racer, they improve on the race course. Same thing happens with triathlon. If you improve your in a vacuum running metrics, in a vacuum meaning no compromising, just pure running ability, you are going to run better on the triathlon course. You may not transition any better. In fact, you may transition a little worse at first if you haven't been doing your brick workouts or what we would call compromised running. But once you get that out of your system, your running's back there waiting for you. Same thing with obstacle course racing. You may transition a little worse if you haven't been doing your transition workouts or your compromised running, but you might have a 2-3 mile stretch of running where you just get back to it. And the obstacles oftentimes are so quick that that little dagger to your gas tank is really just like a pinprick. And so you can, within a few seconds, recover and get back to work. There's really only a few obstacles that blow your arms or legs out. It's the cumulative toll of the race that wears on you. And thus, when you bring in a better aerobic or anaerobic capacity to race day, you handle all those things a little better and you get back to work quicker and you just work better throughout the race. I do not believe that's the way it works with HYROX. I believe that if you just go off, like we talked about in the beginning, in a vacuum and improve your running and then come back to the race course, all other things are the same, but your running is, let's say you've done a fantastic job and you've lowered your 5K pace by 20 seconds per kilometer. I don't think on race day you run 20 seconds per kilometer faster. I don't think you run 10 seconds per K faster. I think that you probably start out running 5 to 10 seconds per K faster, and then you get done with the sleds, and you may not be any faster after that point. And it's this really unfortunate part of HYROX is that you don't really get clean running. You get one guaranteed clean run and that's 1,000 meters. I mean, if it's world championships, it's all the way up to like 1,500 meters potentially for your first run. And then after that, you're slightly compromised. Now, if you're a great skier and you train well, your second run is not really that compromised. And then you hit the sled push. And now you have 6 1-kilometer runs plus all the rock zone remaining, and you are compromised and you never undo that. From that point on, you will never get back to base ground zero ever again. You are now at a deficit. And so from run for sure 3 through 8, it's no longer a contest of how good is your race distance running at 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon. It's now what percentage of that can you keep under varying percentages of extreme duress. You come off the sleds, you are in extreme duress. You come off burpee broad jumps, you're in extreme duress. You come off lunges, you are in extreme duress. Row, depending on the athlete, a little bit less duress. Farmer's carry, certainly less duress than lunges. But even sometimes the farmer's carry is that straw that breaks the camel's back and your running doesn't come back. So my point with all this is that while just simply improving yourself as a runner is necessary, you have to pair it to the demands of race day. And so that is a very big piece of HYROX run training. OCR, not that I'm the end all be all example of an athlete, but I competed at a fairly high level and I coached a lot of people to compete at a high level. And a large percentage of those athletes did very little compromise running. Some did it weekly, some did it monthly. Some really only did it when a race was approaching. Their sharpening workouts, their last 2 to 3 quality sessions had compromise running just to sharpen them up on it. But the rock climbing, the lifting, and the mountain running was enough to get them like 90 to 95% of the way there. And that's just simply not the case in HYROX. Nothing in OCR outside of a double sandbag carry or a 2,000 or 3,000 foot climb was ever as compromising as any one station of HYROX. Just even what is the lightest station in HYROX? The ski-erg, farmer's carry, those 2 stations right there would probably, if you take out the double sandbag carry, be like the second and third hardest things anyone's ever done in an OCR race. Certainly from a duration perspective. Outside of heavy carries and some barbed wire crawls and maybe a swim, but you get a life jacket and usually you can pull yourself on a rope for that. Nothing lasts 4 minutes. Nothing lasts 3 minutes. Most OCR, 80 to 90% of OCR obstacles last between like 1 and 10 seconds. And so you're just simply not getting as compromised. And the level of how it compromises you is sometimes pretty high, but it's brief and it's done. Whereas lunges, burpee broad jump, what a burpee penalty in OCR is 30 burpees max, where most people are doing 40 plus burpee broad jumps just to get through the station. And 30 burpees used to kill people's races. Now you have to do 10% more burpees, 20, 30% more burpees for some people. And it's just part of the race and you have to keep going from there. You're only halfway done with the race at that point. So nothing compromises you as much as the HYROX stations do. And the HYROX event has the shortest runs in between obstacles. Sure, in OCR, sometimes they chain 3 or 4 or 5 obstacles together, and you may do a monkey bar and then a hoist and then a spear throw and then you're a wall and you're on. And they may be only 10 to 20 meters of running in between. But even that, all of those obstacles don't even add up to one station in HYROX. And then you traditionally get 800 meters, 1,000, 2,000, up to at times there's been 5K of running in the middle of a race with no obstacles. So you just get to recover for longer and get back to work. Whereas HYROX at the elite level, you're never running for longer than 4 minutes, other than sometimes the first or last run. So just from both ends of the spectrum, how bad these stations compromise you and how little time you have to ever get out and just get rolling on a run. HYROX is so much more dependent on compromised running than anything else. And the opening, by the time you get to the third station of HYROX, you're doing something brutal. So now that I've laid the groundwork with that, the importance of compromised running, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say that I think oftentimes we see people compromise running more than they really need to. And my belief is that you really only need to do a compromise run 1 time per week. I'm talking a serious compromised run, not like I'm adding a finisher where I'm going to do 30-second skier, 30-second run, take a minute break and do that 4 times. I'm talking where the vast majority of your workout is meant to work on transitioning from stations to running and vice versa. Like a classic HYROX running compromised workout. So with that being said, 1 time per week is all you need to do. That allows us to go back to what I said originally a little bit easier, which is build your running in isolation and then build your compromised running to handle that. A lot of people like to do 3 quality run workouts per week. I think that works just fine. I also think 2 works just fine. And so with that now being one of the guidelines here, either 2 to 3 quality workouts per week, 2 of them are clean and 1 of them is compromised, or 1 of them is clean and 1 of them is compromised. Now, I think you can get away with 2, but I think there needs to be a 3rd quality session in there per week then that is very much erg based. But even those, for the vast majority of the time, keep those clean. Keep those clean early on. And then you can add compromised running to those if you want to. But 1 time per week, I think in all stages of training, except for the very final pre-competition stage. So the last, I would call it 3 to 6 weeks of training, then I would move up to 2 compromised runs per week for some athletes. Simply those that need more time doing it, those who have run less HYROX races. The more times you've raced, the less time you need to brush up on it. The more that skill is in your body and you can get by with doing more of the things in isolation. But even for the consummate pro like Ronkovich or Rich or Hunter or Meg or Lauren, any of these athletes, I still, if I were coaching them, would never program them a week in their final 3 to 5 weeks of training where they didn't have at least 1 heavy compromised workout in there. So 1 to 2 standalone running workouts per week and 1 compromised running workout per week. So that is the backbone of training for HYROX. And then I think it's important to identify what zones or intensities or RPEs we are working in both of these categories. So it is a bit of a fad, but a fad implies that it's going to leave and not necessarily come back. I don't believe that that's necessarily the case. It's a hot topic of running. It's the new hot kid in school, but threshold running is all the rage these days. In my personal belief that working around anaerobic threshold or lactate threshold, whatever you want to call it, is the single best bang for your buck style of run training out there. I don't believe it's the best, most effective way to train for running. I think it's the best bang for your buck. I think that the energy it takes from you compared to the energy it requires to recover, it's a great value proposition. And that's why I think it's so effective. And I love it even more for the sport of HYROX. So absolutely, at least 9 out of 12 months per year, if not all 12 months out of the year, I recommend people are doing threshold-based running. And the beauty of your anaerobic threshold is that you really only have to get within, let's call it 8 to 10% of your actual anaerobic threshold, all the way up like 7, 5, anywhere in there. You're fine. You can run right at anaerobic threshold and get a lot of benefit. All the benefit of a threshold workout can come directly at anaerobic threshold, directly at that inflection point. But you can back off 2%, 5%, 8%, in some athletes all the way up to 10%, but like stay within 8% of that. And you're getting the vast majority of the benefits. You're getting well over 90% of the benefit of doing a full on right at lactate threshold workout, but you can back off 5 to 10%, which dramatically reduces your recovery costs. So it is a really safe style of training. Do I think it's best? No, I think the best intensity to train at is the one you look forward to and can do the most often. The one you can do the most often, the one you can repeat and repeat and repeat for weeks and months on end is the best one for you, because that's going to give you the most stimulus, which is going to give you the most adaptation. You need to be able to recover from it. And that generally determines how much you look forward to it and how often you can repeat it. Early on, looking forward to it is determined by how motivated you are in training, what your goals are, the style of workout you prefer. Long term, the workouts you look forward to are the ones that allow you to repeat them over and over because they don't crush you. And when you're not crushed, you generally have a higher tolerance level for work and you have a higher level of energy, life energy, and workout energy. So when you have high life energy and workout energy, you look forward to your workouts more. So upfront, a lot of people, novices need novelty and pros long-term don't. So the better you get at this sport, the less you're going to need novelty. And that's why, again, the most repeatable intensity that you can show up and do week in and week out for months and years is the best for you. So I want to be clear. No, I don't think threshold is magic. If there was magic to it, there's magic in that it allows you to do it over and over and over and over and over again, and you don't burn out on it if you're not overworking it. And because there are so many moving parts to HYROX, I think that running at the lowest intensity possible while still driving anaerobic benefits is best practice for us, because then we get to spend our energy credits on other demanding things as well, like lifting and station work and erg work. I think those are great areas to put in our energy credits. So from that perspective, I think that threshold running, anaerobic threshold based training, is your best bet for safe, reliable, repeatable HYROX training. But like anything else in running, I think you can go up a whole deviation higher or lower. Maybe even a 2 deviations lower. Like if you wanted to move down, probably 1. Threshold training for most average athletes is right around 10K pace. If you wanted to move down to more like 8K pace with some 5K stuff sprinkled in there, great. If you wanted to move up to 10-mile pace or half marathon based training, great. Doesn't bother me because both of those are fairly repeatable. It's much harder to repeat 5K based work compared to half marathon based training. And the volume needed to support a half marathon based training plan is certainly higher than a threshold or a 5K based volume from just a nuts and bolts standpoint, which is why I just revert back to the sweet spot of lactate threshold training. But both of those I could easily be convinced are great training plans for you. So don't sweat the details on that, but center in on that 40 to 60 minute race pace and drill it over and over and over and over. And if you're a little nervous about how that's going to work, back off to 50 to 75 minute race pace. Drill that over and over and over and over. Doesn't matter to me. 1 time per week, if not 2, that is the intensity range I'm working at. And I want to hit 30 to 40 minutes of work. That's what I'd like to do. 30 to 40 minutes. What's that going to look like? 10 by 3 minutes. 10 to 12 by 3 minutes is a great threshold session. Take 45 to 60 seconds recovery on that session. 5 to 6 by 6 minutes. 6 to 7 by 5 minutes. These are all great workouts. If you want to do distance-based, 10 to 12 by 1,000, 8 to 10 by 1,000 if you're a slower athlete. Run 5 by 2K or 6 by 2K. Run 2 by 5K. These things don't have to be complicated. You can do all sorts of different training. 4 by 4 by 400. Great. Go out and do that. 16 to 24 by 400. Fantastic. I love 3 by 10 minutes, 3 by 12 minutes, 3 by 15 minutes. That's a great progression. Love it. But the point is, you don't have to sweat the small stuff with threshold training as long as you're getting, I would even say 25 to 40 minutes of work for most athletes, and do it 2 to 3 times per week, 1 to 2 times at minimum. So we've covered the in a vacuum stuff. Then what do we do in the compromise realm? Well, with compromise running, my belief is that you can do one of 3 things for it. You can work at race pace, you can work slower than race pace and work on the skill of just doing the work, or you can work faster than race pace and use it as super compensation training and getting used to the transitional aspect of it. So if I'm doing compromise running, where the running during the workout is faster than race pace, I'm going to do shorter reps and I'm going to really focus on getting in and out of stations and forcing myself to work much harder than I'd ever want to. Think James Kelly transitioning in the rock zone. That's the style of workout I'm doing if I'm running faster than race pace. If I'm going to go faster than race pace, I'm going to go faster than race pace. If I'm saying 40 to 60 minute race pace as threshold, I'm not going to go 35-minute race pace. I'm going to go like 25-minute race pace. I'm going to move past that substantially so that the difference, the delta, if you will, between the race pace and what I'm doing now is noticeable enough that I have to really engage in my body and drive in my stride to work, so that everything on race day is a reduction from that. If I'm going to go slower than race pace, I'm going to put the emphasis on the work I'm doing. This is when I'm doing my heaviest work or my most explosive work. This is where I'm doing things that are really difficult in the station work. And then I'm getting back and I am just running a lot closer to aerobic threshold. I'm running slower than race pace. And I'm just using it to work on the skill of running good form under extreme duress. And I like to stick within the 5 to 10 minute rep range for those. So I might go destroy myself. I might take a sled and really work on the power it takes to grab that and walk backwards with it. Center all that force on my lower quads, that feeling you get during length 3 and 4 of the sled pull, where that front of your quads, the lower part, are just starting to blow up. Get to that point during this pull. And then I like to head out over onto the treadmill, keep it slightly uphill, and run 5 to 10 minutes at like aerobic threshold, marathon pace or slower. And it's not slow running. It's fast enough that you have to run a good stride. Like you're using a pretty useful stride, but it's slow enough that you get to actually work on doing it well. Some of these transition workouts, you just get out there and you fight. This isn't a fight. You're going to have a minute or two where you're uncomfortable on there, but then you're going to settle in. And that is a really key process. One, because you have to recruit yourself well on that treadmill or out on the run. You can do it outside. Doesn't matter to me. But you've got to recruit. And what I mean by that is you got to get every little muscle fiber doing its job correctly. You have to think about it. You have to order it to do it well. But you're not running super fast. And so you can check on everything. When you're not underwater in these workouts, you have the capacity to go through your checklist physically and get yourself running really well. Because you're not trying to make it go fast. You can just run moderately quickly, but do it really, really clean and well. In that first transition piece, your arms or legs or lungs are really barking at you, but then you settle in. Rarely in these workouts do you make it past a minute or two of feeling bad. And so in a 10-minute rep, you still get like 8+ minutes of quote unquote clean running. But it's not as truly clean as a standalone. Let's say you were going to do 5 by 8 minutes for a threshold workout. Well, here we're slowing down the pace a little bit. We're still doing 5 by 8, but we're doing it highly compromised now, or 5 by 10. Now 8 of those minutes are pretty clean, but your muscles are way more fatigued than they'd be in the other one. The first minute or two of each threshold workout is super easy. And then the fatigue builds by the end. Well, this one, the fatigue starts up front, which is really, really key for HYROX compromised running. You come out of stations at your absolute worst when you're a good HYROX athlete. And you watch the pros and they come out and you can sometimes tell like they're shuffling a little bit out of sled push and pull. But by the end of their run, they're flying again. Some of the open wave athletes are running decently well, and then the run's just too long and they start to fade. But that doesn't happen at the upper end of the sport, and we're training to get to the upper end of the sport in this conversation, or at least of your age group. So realistically, you're at your worst coming out of the stations, and this is practice for that. And then the third style is obviously doing things at roughly race pace, which in and of itself is right around threshold. You won't be running your threshold pace for the most part, most of these athletes. Some will be at or above threshold on the runs, but most of them are going to be just under it. A lot of these pro men, probably their threshold pace is between 5:15 and 5:30, and they're running 5:40 pace. They're a little bit under it, right? But add in the compromised nature of it, and your heart rate might see threshold, even though you're running pace-wise a little bit slower than threshold. But for all intents and purposes, you're at threshold. Remember, once you're within 10% or so, you're getting most of the benefit of it anyway. So even just running slightly under is just fine in this scenario. Let the station work take up that extra piece of damage you're going to have. No sense damaging both this from station work and overworking the run. So this is roughly a threshold workout again, and you can do any style of threshold workout. Take any interval length you want and throw in some compromisers. Either do actual station work or do some strength exercise that mimics station work. You do thrusters instead of wall balls. You can do step back lunges instead of walking lunges. Do it with dumbbells. Now you're knocking out farmer's carry and lunges at the same time. Do certain things that work on the muscle groups and the movement patterns you're going to have to do on race day. But these are compromised running workouts. You work for a bit, then you get onto the run and you teach your body to shunt that blood back where it's supposed to go. Don't leave your arms so pumped out. At the beginning, you're going to blow out your quads or shoulders or forearms, and it might take you the entire interval rep to feel like that blood's flowing again, getting back to where it should go rather than just pooling in the areas and screaming at you. But over time, that process is going to happen quicker and quicker. And so you can teach your body to do that process quicker. That's half of the recovery on race day, is your body just knowing how to do it. Another big piece is feeling it and getting used to that type of duress. And then the final piece is getting better at it physically, just moving better, moving cleaner, ignoring some of those warning bells that are going off and just say, no, I've done this before. This is fine. I know I'd feel like this for 25 to 45 seconds, then I'm back to good. That all makes you better at it. And the better you get at compromised running, you'll actually find the more volume you can do in your standalone run sessions, because you're better under duress. You hold your form together better. Things start to ache or hurt, like calves or hamstring insertions don't give you as many problems towards the end of your run workouts, because you're better at recruiting and keeping your stride clean under duress. So it actually moves the needle both ways. But the real emphasis here is that you want to spend about 33% of your time compromised running, but you still need to work in isolation on the other days. Now, that's all well and good, but we can't just do the same thing all year round. So my current beliefs on this, and they haven't changed a ton, this part hasn't changed a ton over the years, is that our running in isolation can look the same most of the year. Stay around that threshold range most of the year. And then you have two options when you get closer to race day. My two best practices, again, this is opinion based because this is not a fully established sport, but my opinion on the two best practices for when you get closer to race day are either doing sharpening workouts with your running from a speed perspective, or starting to sharpen in terms of adding in float style recovery workouts that force you to now run your threshold pace under duress. So they're kind of like mini compromised run sessions. So either do the classic running approach where I'm doing 10K pace work all year, and now I drop down into highly anaerobic, VO2 max-ish, within a deviation up from VO2 max. Call it 3K, 5K pace work as you get closer to race day to really prime your anaerobic system, prime lactate clearance, faster reps, longer recovery, and then simply just make race pace feel way easier and get more efficient at it because you're working harder than that. That's option one. It's tried and true in this of any endurance sport, and it's fine. The other route is to start doing float workouts, where instead of taking standing rest, now we're taking running recovery. You're just slowing down in between. I've done both with myself. I've had athletes do both. People respond differently to different things, but because the sport of HYROX is all about dirty running, not clean running, dirtying up these intervals a little bit seems to work really well for people, if nothing else than mentally. So Kirk's favorite workout is that 3-2 float workout. 3 minutes at, let's say, threshold, 2 minutes at aerobic threshold. Go back and forth, anaerobic threshold, aerobic threshold, or do 10K pace and then 1 minute slower than 10K pace, back and forth, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Go fast and easy, simple as that. Call it a 8 out of 10 and then a 6 out of 10, back and forth. There's unlimited styles to doing this workout. And the only really thing that changing any one of those denominators is going to do is change how much volume you get in before you can't keep your paces anymore, or your efforts, or however you're judging it. Those are really good ways of dirtying up the interval and getting you a little bit more race ready. And then on the compromised components, I think it just makes logical sense that you start adding in more race specific station work as you get closer and chaining them together the way you're going to have to on race day. So step back lunges become heavy walking lunges. Burpee or devil press or whatever turns, or man makers turn into burpee broad jumps. getting more and more race specific. And I like to alternate between going heavier than race weight and then going super explosive and fast on these reps. Grind against them and then work faster than you'll need to on race day. And it just helps kind of bake the cake at the end, get all the different ingredients and seasonings in there. But again, this is the kind of thing that's going to vary athlete to athlete and is going to change as you change as an athlete. Over time, you won't need to work on certain stations as often or certain cadences or weights the same with the same emphasis and time that you used to have to. So those are things that you and your coach or you and you as the coach can figure out over time. But generally, you just get a little bit more race specific as we get closer to race day. I like to start with slower compromise running in the off season, doing those aerobic threshold run pace intervals with heavier work in between. And then I build towards race pace or beyond as I get closer. My last two, I like to have last 2 to 3 workouts very much transition based, where I'm running fast, working fast, running fast, break, that kind of workout. That is, in a nutshell, my overall, not a 20,000, but like a 5 to 10,000 foot view on how to build a running program for HYROX. The one thing we really haven't touched upon is volume. Highly subjective. But what we've seen from other multi-sport competitions is that you can get away with less running volume in these if all your runs are very purposeful. You can also get away with doing fairly high running volume if you modulate your intensities intelligently. So if we look at, let's say, the Norwegian-based triathletes or New Zealand-based triathletes, they run pretty high mileage. You'll see guys doing 60 to 80 miles per week. You'll see 80 to 100, 120 kilometers of running per week with a fair amount of quality work. You'll also see people doing that 50K per week, 30 miles per week, but a high percentage of their runs are race specific and highly compromised. So a triathlon, a lot of people will run 3 quality runs per week, and that may be all the running they're doing, but it's all brick work. 1 interval, 2 brick workouts, or they run off the bike, run off the swim, whatever they're going to do. That is an effective way of doing it for HYROX as well. These 2 to 3 workouts we've talked about can be all your running. They're going to have to be a little higher volume workouts then. That 30 to 40 minute range better be up near 40. You can even exceed that if need be. But it's doable, especially if you make up the volume on the ergs. And that's where the volume piece gets rounded out. I think it's no different than any other sport. You got to be if you want to be a pro, you got to be 10 to 12 plus hours per week of cardiovascular work. Can't really do that on 3 to 4 runs per week. You have to get it on the ergs, get it on the bike. Rich does stuff in the pool. I don't know how much he really is doing that for an aerobic development standpoint as much as he is active recovery and some little bit of aerobic maintenance work. But point is, I don't care how much you're running. I care how much aerobic and anaerobic work you're doing per week. What your pie chart looks like, pie graph, I don't care. You just have to vary it. If you're going to run 7 times per week, great. If you're going to run 3 times per week, great. You still have to get the quality work in. And if you're running 7 times per week, you're not going to be able to lift and hit your ergs with the same volume and intensity that you would be doing otherwise. The more you run, the less you have to erg. The less you run, the more you need to erg. You got to balance out those scales of aerobic and anaerobic development somehow. I don't believe there is any disadvantage to being a high volume runner in the sport of HYROX, assuming you get the needed quality work in each week, specifically compromised. I don't think there's any disadvantage to being a low volume running athlete in HYROX. You can get away with 20 to 30 miles per week, probably, but you better have an additional 8 to 10 hours of non-impact cardio in your program per week. Again, we're talking if you have aspirations of being on a podium at a world championship, either in age group or in the pro field. 10 to 12 hours, I think, is the minimum investment you have to do to be able to do it at that level. So I don't care really what your breakdown is as long as you're hitting it. My beliefs are that ski erg is the safest place to overwork You want to get some extra spicy work in, some anaerobic work, do it on the ski erg. If you want to get extra compromised work in, you can throw a 1,000 to 2,000 meter row at the end of anything you want to do. And that'll probably be the last thing I'll throw on here, is that you can add in extra compromised running by just adding these like 5 to 10 minute runs off the back of anything you do in HYROX. Do a lifting session, finish up, hop on the treadmill, throw it to 5% and run for 7 minutes. Up tempo, get to aerobic threshold or above. Very small time investment, very small recovery investment, great HYROX skill work. You can add those in all over the place, running off the blank, run off the ergs, run off of some station work, do your Metcon and just head out the door for a 1 mile tempo. Those are like volume amplifiers. But we're now hitting 40 minutes here. I don't know how long Rich went. I don't know how long that man can solo for. Assume he's like me, where you got to cut us off at some point. But that's where I'm going to leave you guys this week. I'm now going to go listen to Rich's. It'll be interesting if I have to come back and delete this entire episode, if it sounds like I just plagiarized, or if I listen to his and I'm like, my goodness, he made me sound like a fool. So I'm not posting this yet. I'm going to go listen to his, but what's done is done. Thank you very much. We'll see you later this week.